with student loans, I don't know, for me, I hated verifying my income and my employer every year for the public service loan forgiveness. We know that sometimes who they put in positions as representatives and administrators in the Department of Education are sometimes not the most knowledgeable. And so I just kind of hated just this reliance on the government to forgive my student loans.
Renee talks about that all the time. She says, like, you spend your entire life trying to have major control over your career, how you study, the grades you get, and then all of a sudden, a major portion of your paycheck, you don't know if it's going to get forgiven at the end of 10 years.
When I talk to people about finances, it's all about control. It's all about strategy. It's all about understanding how your money is moving. And for me, that level of uncertainty, I just really didn't agree with.
I think we kind of come from similar backgrounds.
Yeah.
But like, I just found myself just literally like in a rat race of wake up, try to get to work, try to get there, be the best surgical resident I could be. You're staying there late. You study at night, and then you wake up and you rinse, wash, and repeat. And the last thing I had on my mind was just finances, right? Because I literally was like, okay, do I have enough to pay my mortgage? Do I have enough to pay my bills? I wasn't thinking about saving. I just wanted to just get through residency because I just wanted to get through residency. And I wish I was at your mindset, right? So I guess the thing that I want to ask is like, how did you like not feel like you were drowning between trying to survive as a resident, be in a new city and all those different things, survive residency, get through, thrive, and then also at the same time have this like forward-thinking plan that even the extra bit that I have, I'm going to put towards this delayed gratification of paying off my debt. Talk to me about that. Like, how did you just make that decision? Like, this is where the money's going to go, right? Because to me, that's tough, right? So talk to me about that.
I think it just starts with having a mindset of whatever habits and behaviors you develop today have compounding interest. And I am a little bit of a hoarder of digital clutter. And I found a budget that I created in medical school. And it didn't dawn on me like at the time, but just being able to manage the money, my student loans and the money that I had coming in at medical school and developing a budget then helped me to master that skill. So when I got to residency, I could build upon it. I could now think about creating a debt strategy and understanding what an income-driven repayment option is. And okay, if it's based upon my income, so what do I got to do to lower my income to lower my payments if I'm seeking for forgiveness? It allowed me to capitalize and understand that okay, I have these moments in which I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm doing other things that I can build in some education here outside of medicine. And how can I do that? By capitalizing on an audio version of learning material. So I don't have to necessarily sit down and read, but I am still building this muscle. And to understand that financial literacy has two components. It has the acumen, so the understanding, the stuff that we read about in the books, but it also has the utilization of that information. And so I knew then that if I don't start to practice these small skills, when I become an attending and making a lot of money, then I'm more susceptible to making mistakes. So let me just practice at my lower threshold, right? My lower income.
So Dr. Brittany, you talking where I'm talking. I keep telling these folks, listen, so I didn't do it, right? So I didn't practice those skills. But we always, what you laughing at? But it's the truth.
Why are you shedding a tear?
No, because I always tell people, listen, it's like, do it when the stakes are low. Right? When the stakes are lower, right? Like you should be trying to pay off some debt, try to invest a little bit right now, because when you get into this pile of money that you're not used to having, right? Some of y'all don't even know how to write a check, right? When you get to that point where you are, what do you call it? Let's be real. Let's be real.
Surprise.
Right? Some of y'all don't even know how to write a check when by the time you're becoming an attending. Like, how are you expected? You're going to be more, more gun shy, so to speak, and excuse the pun, but more shy to take action And that's when you're going to start hiring people to make the decisions for you.
Right.
And then that's when they're going to start to take advantage
Take all
of
that money.
Take all that money. Now you're paying someone 1% to basically put your money on an automatic investing plan when it's
and
like
they
you could have
don't
did it
do
yourself.
it as well. Like studies
Right.
show that they don't do it as well compared to like a more passive form of investing. And so, yeah, keep preaching. I hear that wholeheartedly. But I think a lot of us just feel like when I talk to residents, I recently gave a talk on financial wellness to African students. Like there was more public health medical students and some attending at an African health conference. And one person, she's like, I was talking to my friend who does finance, and he told me that I should wait to start investing because even if I can only invest like $100, like that's not going to afford me anything. And I'm like, it's not necessarily the amount that you're investing, it's the habit that you're building. Right. And so I think sometimes we often defer the education until we arrive to the moment. And then, right. And then we feel like, oh, well, I'm not an expert in this, so let me give this over to somebody else. So I wholeheartedly agree. I think financial education, we all have to make money, but no one is going to care more about the money that you make than you do.
Oh, man.
So why not start caring today?
Yeah.
I feel like praise music in the background. She knows what she's talking about. She knows what she's talking about.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, but that's with any skill, right? And I don't know why people take the skill of either managing your money or investing your money or doing whatever it is that you need to do with your money any differently, And I it's funny because, I work with pre-meds all the time. And even the skill of answering questions for the MCAT, for example, a lot of them wait until, no, I have to do all of the review first before I look at even one question. And I'm like, let me ask you a question. If you or a loved one of yours was pregnant and then they came to me and I'm like, well, I read a lot about C-sections. I read a whole lot about it. Okay. And I finished the last page about C-sections today, on the day that you are getting ready to have your baby. Am I the person that you want doing your C-section?
Right.
Probably
Not
not.
Right.
So you need to build up
You
that
need to practice
skill.
it. Yeah.
Right.
And take
you need
the chances.
to practice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I got a question for you. So your spouse, did he have debt also?
He did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in terms of the debt, how do you guys look at debt? Like, is it in a similar situation where, like, is it your debt? Is it his debt? Your own debt? Do you mind speaking about that at all?
I don't mind. I'm an open book.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. I get a lot of flack from my co-host of our podcast about this because we kind of have in the management of our finances and also our debt, like this is mine, this is yours, and this is ours. And so we have those three buckets. And that's how we thought about our debt. When I was paying off my student loan debt, it was my debt. So I could do what I chose to do with my debt. And when I was paying it off, my husband was still in residency, so he didn't afford anything to that debt payoff. Now, when he had his debt, I was a little bit more advanced in now understanding, okay, what does it look like to refinance, right? No, seriously, I had a little bit of experience behind me.
You sunned them. You told them exactly what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do right here, Dr. Simon, all right? Just follow my lead.
That's so funny.
That's what Dr. Renee did to me, though. In a good way.
You are together, right?
In a good way. We made a plan to pay off our debt, right? Our plan was to pay off our debt in about 15 years?
The first plan was 15 years, and then it came down to 5 years, and then I was like, nope, we could do it in 3.
Right. And I came home from work, and she met me at the door and was super excited about how we could pay off the debt faster than 5 years. And I'm the type of person who, if we make a plan, stick to the plan.
He really is.
Because I'm just when we stick to a plan, let's just stick to a plan. So she was like, no, I got a plan that we could pay it off maybe in 3 years or even in, would you say 3 or 1 year?
No. Well, yeah. I looked at the 3 year, the 1 year, and the 5 year. And I was like, I think we can do the 3 year. We definitely couldn't do 1.
So she went through all the different permutations of it. And I was like, all right, it makes sense. And I literally followed her lead. And rather than 5 years, we did it in 3.
See?
So Dr. Brittany, what I'm saying is like, yeah, like whoever has the knowledge, that's who we going with and stuff. So,
So what'd you tell your husband?
Yeah, so at that time, and I love that you listen to Renee and her plan. And Renee, I love that you were excited, actually, because I get very excited. Like I go to sleep calculating some of these things, and my husband's like, okay, just hold on. I get
like
a
a beautiful
whiteboard
mind.
and I draw it out.
Yes.
So at that time, he had a loan that was very, very high interest while he was in residency. And I'm like, I think we could refinance just this one particular loan to get the interest rate down. And so that's what we did. We just took a chunk of that while he was still in residency, and we refinanced that, and we paid that down pretty aggressively. You know, what I learned from that experience is when I refinanced my student loans, I went for a 5-year fixed. So I knew I had 5 years and that this was going to be the payment. And so I could budget around that, even if I paid extra on it, as I did. But for him, because we wanted to get a lower interest rate, we did an ARM instead, an adjusted rate agreement. I guess it's not a mortgage, but adjusted rate agreement. And I did not like that. Personally, I don't know how you felt about it, but the interest rate just kept going up, you know?
Right. That's the thing that scares me the most.
Yeah, because they say variable or adjusted, but it never goes down.
Yeah, you know, at that point, it was not going down. It was, yeah. So I didn't like the variability of that. And so we paid that off pretty aggressively while he was still in residency. And then once he did his fellowship, when we moved to Boston, we took advantage of an extremely low interest rate and a refinance. Now, when we did that, we actually had a bit of a different view on debt between he and I, because by that time,
y'all had a fight.
We did not have a fight because it was still his debt,
nice
right?
About it. She trying to be nice about it and stuff. Listen, Dr. Brittany.
It was about to go down.
We 9 years in podcasting. We know how it goes. We had a little disagreement and stuff.
A little, skerfuffle.
We squabbled up. Like, come on. Dr. Brittany, come on.
No squabbling over here. We don't squabble.
We pod in here, Dr. Brittany. Tell the truth, man. Come on.
Leave her alone.
Okay, so let me explain. I think because some people think debt is the devil, and I don't feel that way. I used to. That's why I paid off my student loans so aggressively. And I think that I had evolved a little bit in understanding how to leverage a lower interest rate and maybe do an interest rate arbitrage, put more money into the stock market to build our net worth faster than to pay down the debt aggressively. But he still had the debt. It was in his name and it was his debt. So
so he feels like he has more. Right. He has more at stake. He has more at stake.
He has more at stake. And we also just have to acknowledge how emotional money can be. Sometimes we think about finances as being completely logical, like the numbers say this and this is what you should do. But there's a huge psychological component to money. And I think if we're unable to reconcile those emotions, then we're going to lead down a path that's going to maybe lend itself to different results, or at least it will help us to heal whatever emotional turmoil and dissonance that we're having internally. So I think that that's where we were. I was debt free at that point. I had paid off my debt, so it wasn't my responsibility. This was his debt that he felt was his responsibility. But I'm like, if you can leverage and put this money in the stock market instead, then we could potentially grow our net worth faster, and the numbers are going to make sense. But from a psychological and emotional perspective, he's like, no, but I still got this debt that I don't want to have.
What'd y'all decide to do? Or what did he decide to do?
So he paid off his debt pretty aggressively. And it was at a low interest rate. It was like at 2.9. And I don't remember the exact amount. I'll have to go back to take a look, but I think he had like 120 or 150 at that point when he was in fellowship and paid it off pretty aggressively.
So I think you are absolutely right when you talk about that there's numbers and then there's like the emotional aspect of it. She describes that emotional aspect better than me. I'm more of the numbers type person. But we paid off $662,000 in 3 years.
Whoa.
I remember. Do you remember those months where there was literally like a $20K payment?
Yes.
There was like a $20,000
Yes.
payment that we made to the student loan company. Like that, because what we ended up doing is we ended up doing locums in addition to our other jobs to pay off the debt quicker. So when you talk about that emotional component of like, okay, this is what's in your bank account, and just being like, yeah, nah, that's for Navient, and just push it right into the middle, and it's just gone. It was so painful. But, you know, when we saw the next month's calculation and the interest like decrease so much because there was less principal, that's what, the logical side is like, okay, this is working.
Right.
But that was painful to see that like $20K leaving. You know what I'm saying?
It's not like Johnny had 6 apples. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not reading something, just a word problem, right? You're really, really taking this on because it has to do with you. It is personal, because it is personal. So, I think if while the arbitrage is real, right, where you could certainly increase your net worth, even faster, the reality is that in order to, going back to like building up that muscle of, paying off, or investing and doing all the other things that you can do with your money, that emotional block is then decreased. That emotional block just lowers. And so now he might be so much more open to doing all of those things and taking those risks because he doesn't have the debt.
Sometimes this may be something that it's just not for y'all. Do you see, like, what I'm saying is when you feel like when you come from, for example, when you come from like, she was able to do it because she came from Flint, right? There's that background of like, basically what I'm trying to say is when you feel like you're the major breadwinner, sometimes you don't want to take chances. And you're just like, yo, I got to pay off this debt. And I don't have time to put my money in the stock market. That would be great. But if I lose my money, particularly if you don't have, if you're not really knowledgeable about the stock market and
you're just new to it.
And okay, like, look, like me and and, I'm sure Dr. Simon knows now, like, the likelihood of you losing all your money if you do it the right way.
It'd have to be the zombie apocalypse.
Right? Like, that's not going to happen.
Money.
But if you don't know that much about it, you're like, yo, I ain't putting my money, I ain't gambling my money. I'm paying off this debt. You know what I'm saying? And it might be a message that maybe the kids then now will be like, okay, mom and dad did it this way. We kind of know that, hey, listen, if we end up having to take loans for any reason and it makes financial sense, then maybe we take more of a balanced approach and so forth. So I definitely understand his sentiments. I do have a question for you, though, in terms of paying off the debt, right? Once you became an attending. How did you do that? Like, can you walk us through that process of like, your income comes in, and then how did you pay it off, and how'd you do it?
How were you consistent?
Yeah.
I piggyback there.
Yeah. So I think a couple of ways. One was after I did the refinance and I knew that, okay, I've refinanced my student loans for a lower interest rate, but the payment increased. The payment was about $2,500 a month because I had condensed and truncated the payoff time. So I went from, under standard repayment would be 10 years, or even thinking about income-driven repayment, right, under 10 years technically. And now I've decreased that down to 5 years. So the first thing I did was I wanted to ensure that I could pay off this higher amount and do that consistently first before I try to. My plan was not to pay it off aggressively in 2 years and 9 months. My plan was to pay it off in 5 years.
Right.
So under a new attending salary, I'm still trying to manage stuff. I just moved in with my new husband. We're trying to figure out how to work things out. I basically just set it automatic. I removed myself from the equation. That payment, they got their payment every single month once the money hit the account.
So this was a new minimum amount that you're paying, like a higher minimum.
This is a higher minimum amount that I was paying. Yes, when I did the refinance.
5 hours or 5 years.
And so now, then I did observations. Okay. So now this is automatic. How am I feeling about my money? Am I able to do the other things that I desire to do? We're newlyweds. We want to travel. We don't want to be stuck in the house, right? We want to eat out. We want to go to people's weddings. And so we were still able to do that. Okay, I'm able to do all that. I maxed out my 401k. I basically just put that on automatic. Okay, and I still have money left over. Okay, what else can I do? And when we think about finances, money, it has been given this branding that is very complicated. It's not that complicated. It's actually quite easy. Like if you could do medicine, you could do money. And so I knew, okay, the money equation in my mind is your income minus your expenses equals your opportunity. That opportunity was my ability to pay off my debt. And so how do I modify that equation? I could work more, do locums and moonlighting and all this extra to increase my income, or I could decrease my expenses, or I could rewrite the equation and I could say income minus your opportunities equal your expenses. So at this point, I was not up for working more because I've always been an entrepreneur. So I was working on a hair accessory in the background. That's a whole nother story. I was working on a hair accessory in the background. So I'm like, I don't want to see no more patients. I'm not trying to work extra. So how can I minimize my expenses? And to my husband's chagrin, like, because I'm from Flint, because I grew up in simple means, I knew how to like make the most. So I essentially decreased our expenses, and I lived very simply, and I would unplug things like the microwave and the TVs. And my husband was
Good night,
frustrated.
everybody.
Yeah.
He was
I get it.
frustrated, right? And so I just figured out, okay, how can I minimize expenses? How can I leverage other tools that are accessible so that I can minimize expenses? So, at some point we got a credit card with points. We did not carry a balance on it, but we were able to leverage those points to travel. Right. And so it was just kind of doing some of those things. And then once I mastered that and I saw that there was still additional cash flow, I would put that additional cash flow. If I came into a windfall, like a bonus, we would get, our bonus every year. I knew that was coming in October after everything was done. Okay, let me put the extra money towards the student loans.
And that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
So it seems like you were very systematic.
Yeah.
About things, and that you were just very intentional, which is, what we preach on the show all the time is that, nobody's paying off debt, in 2+ years on purpose, without purpose, right? Like it's not going to be by accident. You have to be very purposeful about what you're doing, and unplugging the appliances is diabolical, as the kids say.
I left the refrigerator plugged in, right? Because I didn't want to waste the
food. Yes, that would have been counter to what you were trying to do. All the food's spoiled. Child, we got to buy more groceries.
Now, because you did mention earlier that you have some other projects. I think you mentioned real estate.
So we are diving, and we have one real estate property right now that we own. And my goal is to purchase 2 more, or our goal. I think it originated with me, but now my husband's like, yeah, when we buying our next property. So to purchase 2 more this year. I'm not ready for it. I think my husband's like, yeah, let's do this thing, but I'm not ready for it yet because I still want to read a little bit more. I want to make sure that I can evaluate properties pretty quickly, understanding, cash flow, the returns and all of that. And I just haven't practiced that enough. So it's a goal for this year and we're going to achieve it. I'm just not, the first quarter, I'm not ready yet.